So I'd started that company in 1999 and had made a lot of headway in a very short space of time. And then it went from, everyone wanted a website to where if you had AFL.com, someone would pay you $1 million for it, to websites weren't worth anything. And bricks and mortars where it's at, this whole thing was a fad. It's a load of crap. And then nobody wanted a website. You couldn't win a job. So at that point, I was looking around what else to do. And I discovered mobile phones, and that Java ME, a form of Java, was used to develop software on mobile phones. And I was like, this is really interesting. I still had one or two programmers that were left, because we used to do a lot of back-end, like databases and PHP and all of that sort of stuff.
What did a mobile phone look like at this stage?
Oh, so
we're talking about Snake.
Yeah.
Okay. A Nokia 1610.
Yeah, I was just going to say a Nokia 1610. I still have my Nokia 1610.
It's time to upgrade.
No, I want to. Why? It's got big buttons, it's easy to read, and it feels good because I'm an old person.
I love how the phones got smaller and smaller and smaller, until 3G came out. But I'm better at that. And the parody in the
Zoolander
with the I remember them getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But 3G came out, and then they became bricks again because of the batteries to run them. And it's around when 3G came out, and we had the World Congress on IT in Adelaide. So we could look that date up. I can't remember when it was. I had built on a mobile phone a precursor to something like combining Google Maps with the yellow pages in a directory.
You're pre-interpreting the smartphone.
Yes, isn't that pretty much what Elon Musk did with his brother? That was a serious
similar thing. Yeah. And I had got the attention of Compaq and a whole bunch of other companies because we were using little PDAs then. I don't know if you remember them.
Yes.
You had the pen and whatever, so you could pull out your PDA.
A Palm Pilot.
Yes, and in the Adelaide CBD, you could look up businesses, see them on a map, and give them ratings and all of those sorts of things. The kind of thing that Google Maps became, but it didn't exist in that way then. I built that, and then I built a timetabling system for mobile phones, and I sold that into Canberra to the Canberra bus company. I couldn't get any traction here in South Australia. And I was working with a company called MNet. MNet had got about $10 million funding under, I think it was called BITS funding back then, to promote the use of 3G technology in Australia. And so I was doing a lot of work with them. They'd have a random thing like, we're going to do the Australian Tennis Open, we need this little app built or whatever, and that's where I kind of learnt the craft. But then what happened was another HTML story, and this is going to sound like I'm a bullshit artist the whole way through, but is that whole fake it till you make it. And I guess you got to back yourself. A company called THQ called me out of the blue, and THQ, for those who don't know, is a gaming company out of London, a UK company, equivalent to like EA in the US. There's THQ there, and THQ had started a mobile division. And they were looking for someone in the EMEA region, and Australia had a pretty weak dollar at that point. They were looking for a company who could do porting. So porting is, back when we had all these phones, there were Motorola's, there were Nokia's, all the different phones. We didn't just have iPhone and Samsung. There were like hundreds of them. And they would all have different memory capabilities, different screens, different buttons. So we would do what's called porting. They'd send us the game source code, and we're talking about 64K games or 128K games, tiny little games. Yeah. And they would send us those games, and they would say, make it work on these 70 handsets. So number one, you had to go buy the 70 handsets. You had to understand them. You had to port the code, and this wasn't a skill that existed. So I had to get university students and train them up in this area and get them going. But how I started was THQ rang me. It was just before Easter or something like that, and said, we've got this game. We need you to port it to these 20 handsets. And I remember I couldn't buy the handsets. I couldn't do anything about getting the handsets. We had to try and find emulators online and try and fake it so that we could get these things to work. And they gave us a really short timeline, but they were like, oh, we'll pay you £5,000 per handset or something. And it was like a lot of money, and it was in like 3 or 4 days. And I was like,
let's make it happen.
They were like, can you do this?
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, of course we can. We didn't sleep for 3 days.
Yeah.
Me and 2 other guys, we just stayed up. I'm scouring the internet looking for clues of how we can do this. And anyway, we sent it to them and it all worked. And they wrote back and they said, that was kind of a joke. We didn't think that you could pull that off in that short a time without having the resources or whatever. Normally we'd supply this and that and that. It was just a test to see what you guys were capable of. So then they gave us all their work.
Wow.
So overnight. So then I was hiring left, right and centre.
See, that's a really good, and I think I just get to interrupt there because I think that point is a really valuable point for anyone today who thinks, I'd like to do something. I need all these resources. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. I don't get the backing. I can't do it. You have to back yourself. Mm-hmm. You've got to come up with an idea. And if you're given the slightest opportunity, anticipate the window of that opportunity and anticipate the likelihood of success if you actually beat that time. Mm-hmm. And then just work yourself to death until you've done it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people today don't get that. And a lot of opportunities for people are missed because they think, no, I want someone to give me more so I don't have to put in quite so much.
It's exactly like that. And we all get trained that, you're going to go to university, get a job, work your way up. To be an entrepreneur is very foreign for a lot of people. I always knew I wanted to start a business. There was that period where I said I was in Gosford and I was getting guitar lessons. I remember I always wanted to start my own business. And I remember at the train station, because I used to catch a train into Sydney, the train station, there was this florist, and I saw it had just like a little florist cart on the side of the thing, and all the men would buy flowers for their wives on the way home. And I was looking at it and going, that's a pretty good business, low overheads, whatever. You just roll your cart up to the train station. And I remember that's my real father lived there, and I remember going home to him and saying, this florist is for sale for like, I don't know, $10,000, $8,000. I didn't have $8,000. And I said to him, do you think it's a good business? If it is, would you loan me the money? I'll pay you back in whatever period of time. And he looked at it and he goes, no, you won't make any money out of this. You're not going to get the money. And I always had in my mind, how do you start a business? Because to start a business, you've got to have $100,000, $200,000. How do you got to buy a business? I didn't understand you could just bootstrap a business and that you could just have an idea and start it. That to me was a completely foreign thing. It was only that I had studied and then decided I'm good at architectural visualization. I could go find some clients and I could just start doing that. And if it didn't work, I could have gone and got a job. But to me, that was an easy progression. And then it rolled into the next thing, and here I am. But if I hadn't taken that leap, and that was, in my 20s, not when I was younger. So I understand how hard it is for people to start a business. And I echo exactly what you said, that if you have that yearning inside of you, just whatever it takes. You hear stories of kids who get a newspaper run and then they save up enough money to buy a printer, and then they use that printer to do something else, and then that leads to something. That's exactly what happened to me, but in a different way. And I guess I was always entrepreneurial. Like in primary school, I was always doing some hustle. I'd go to a friend's house and make all these jaffles with his parents' food, and then I'd take them to school and sell them.
Low overheads.
I was like doing cartoon drawings of Donald Duck and stuff in grade 1 and selling them for like $2 each, and just doing random things that would make money. I was always trying to do some hustle. Or I used to go into people's houses and take their Coke bottles. They were 20 cents each.
I remember that.
It was 20 cents to play pinball. And in Queensland, everyone had these houses on stilts, and they'd just leave their Coke bottles under the house. I used to just help myself. Maybe that's not entrepreneurial. Maybe that's just theft. I was recycling.
You have to define what an entrepreneur is. You see an opportunity and you exploit it. It doesn't necessarily, in the definition, doesn't necessarily anywhere say honestly.
Well, they left them under their house perhaps for someone to take.
I think that was something sent by the good Lord himself to make sure that poor underprivileged children like us got to play pinball and Space Invaders.
But I don't condone stealing. No.
Was that
neither do we.
phone business? So was that Podmo?
No, so that was Kakan Studio. That led to Podmo. So Kakan Studio. So then after THQ, we started doing all of their work. Then the other companies rang us. So EA, we won their work, and there were a couple of other companies that were doing their work for. In parallel, I had built my own mobile games, and I would go to, strangely enough, the Hong Kong trade fair, the autumn trade fair in Hong Kong at the convention center, and there'd be everything under the one roof. And I would try and sell my games into the mobile operators throughout Asia, and they, take your game on, and every sale you'd get like 50 cents or something like that. And I never cracked that market. I never built a game that actually cut through and, Crazy Birds or whatever. If I kept going at it long enough, maybe I would have, but the porting just took off. So it ended up, 25 staff all doing porting. There was some admin staff on that, but mainly all programmers porting games.
Is that here in Adelaide?
Yeah. So it was the first company of its type in Australia, I believe. And we invented it. It didn't exist before. It just happened. So I'd come back from a trip overseas, and as all good ideas come to you, it was in the shower. We were doing these Bluetooth. We were doing these. It really does happen like that.
I should take more showers.
Maybe your brain just disconnects or something, and these things hit you like bolts of lightning. We're doing these Bluetooth games and Bluetooth peer-to-peer, like networking games. And back then, Bluetooth was big. People had like Bluetooth names, and people were chatting up other people using Bluetooth and sending files and all sorts of things. And I was reading the Bluetooth spec because we were doing this network Bluetooth game. And I was like, hang on a minute. You're going to have like 200 and something channels in Bluetooth, and they're hopping frequencies. So basically, in radio terms, you're going to have 200 people in one space all communicating with each other. And then I was like, what would happen if you hop from one phone to another phone to another phone to another phone, the whole tin can with the string thing? I could build basically, this is when telecommunications costed a lot. And this is 3G started, and data was stupid expensive. Mobile phones were stupid expensive. I was like, you could talk for free if you're in a shopping center. Everyone, if they had software on their phone, which I could build using Java, and they download it, they could all be a little base station, like a cellular station, and they could all talk to each other. I was like, yeah, that could work. And then I was like, I could build little Bluetooth stations, and I could put them in coffee shops all around the city. If they had enough range, eventually all these bubbles would connect up together in libraries, in wherever else. And it was an advertising platform for the retailer. So whenever someone walked past, it would ping them and say,
buy my coffee.
Yeah, buy my coffee or whatever. Yeah. And then when you were there, you could browse classifieds, you could download music, you could
so it keeps people in the store, gets them in the store, and then keeps them there for a while.
But the thing was, it was a free network.
Yeah.
So instead of paying Telstra or whoever else, it was, so I called it Podmo, and it was Podmo for the people. The idea of Podmo was pods, like pods as in, it sounds a bit hippie, but pods like dolphins and mobile. This is a way for us all to come together and communicate without using Telstra, without using Optus.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand anything about telecommunications then. I got a call
all the politics.
And I got a call from Telstra hated me. Yeah. There was one guy at Telstra who refused to. I used to do a lot of public speaking. He said he refused to be on a panel with me ever again.
Wow.
Because I was very anti-Telstra, because I knew what they did to content developers like us.
Yeah.
They would sell something for $5 and they'd give us 5 cents.
Yeah.
And then they'd say, we support Australian developers. It's like, this is back Crazy Frog kind of day.
Yeah.
But I got a call from the Attorney General. And they're like, do you have a telecommunications license? And I go, no. What's a telecommunications license? And they go, well, it seems that your software can be used for telecommunications, and we need to understand that. We need to be able to monitor it. We need to be able to do whatever. But I had seen a lawyer, and they said, as long as you are, your device is on private property and you're not in the public space, you don't need to. So I had an agreement with all the Chibos and everywhere else. I had these stations. that it was private property and that they were providing the network, not me. And that's how I got around it. But yeah, the Attorney General.
So someone's tapped the Attorney General on the shoulder and say, this could compromise our income or from the company, or simply it's an independent communication system.
And this is post-September 11th.
Yeah.
So there was
it was interesting because that was a few years after I think they dropped most of the license requirements for people to have CB radios.
Yes.
So unless you're actually broadcasting, you could have a communications device, which is, if we look at it, it's for an authority to monitor and to determine whether people can communicate freely and openly is quite totalitarian.
It is.
And it's completely and utterly wrong. Unless, of course, someone who thinks it's right wants to come onto the podcast next, so then I'll change my mind. But so you were right on the edge of having large corporations tap governments on the officials on the shoulder and say, please stop this person doing this.
Well, yes. So someone had whispered to the Attorney General or whatever. Something had happened. It could have been Telstra. It could have been whoever.
That's very cool.
So it was
to
cool.
be that person, to have achieved that much, and to then to have that level of...
you're onto something.
I do. And I think to this day it's a great shame that it never happened. And that's one of those. That's one of those moments where you could have been Elon Musk, or you could have been one of these big entrepreneurs if one of those big ideas just hit at the right time. So here comes the sad part of this again.
No.
So